And we are live. Hello, Motor Rider World fans, and welcome to our second Talking MotoGP show within basically a week. Back-to-back races. Of course, the season kicked off at Portimao last weekend, or the weekend before, and then it was backed up by the second round in Argentina. And what a round it was. MotoGP just never fails to excite and throw up curveballs left, right, and center. And of course, the biggest curveball came from our very own Brad Binder. So we'll definitely be talking about that. Main race, a little bit disappointing, especially after the sprint race that we saw. So yeah, we got a lot to talk about. We all know what happened kind of in the racing. I've got the expert that is Sheridan Morais to join me and give us his points of view. But I think one big topic of discussion that I'd like to talk about is certainly the penalties in MotoGP. We saw a few handed out in Portugal, and certainly last year and the year before. And in Argentina, I just saw, again, just some inconsistency in some of the penalties that were handed out there. So for me, that's a big talking point, of course, on top of the Brad Binder brilliance. Douglas Twig, evening, Rob and everyone. What a great weekend. So considering everything that happened, Brad is magic and a true warrior. Bez and Luca are coming to the fore, and Frankie surprised friend and foe. So many riders stepping up. Not to mention Alex, with all the guys injured, it has given other guys an opportunity, which is the big positive from the weekend. Belief is a very strong tool, and weapon Kota is going to be a whole new ball game. That is from Douglas Twig. And Douglas, yep, summed up the Argentina weekend perfectly there. So we'll definitely touch upon a lot of those points. John McLaughlin, Luca Jefferson, Rob Swart, Mickey Rousseau, Alzan Labsha, Scott Mordaunt, Daryl Bryson III, Joan Mulder, Nicole Briet, one of our always joins our shows. So welcome, Nicole, all the way from Cape Town. Warwick Evans, Michael McDougall, Luis Miguel Falcao, Alroyd Host, Stephen Kolgoxi, Siggy Zimmerman, Marnie Duplessis, Grant Shearer. Hey, Grant Shearer, I hope you're doing well. I haven't heard that name in a while. Charmaine Folyun, Daryl Hancock, Rob Hairpin, Ray Hendy. Hey, Ray Hendy, how you doing? Andrew Kate, Mr. Andrew, how are you doing? David Quigley, Daniel Stein, Harbour, Grant Stewart, Bronwyn Holmes. Jeez, everyone's joining in there. So great to have you all on board. So hello and welcome once again, and let's get straight into it. Then Rob Cragg. Now there's a great name, another great name from Cape Town, one that myself and my guest here, Sheridan Morais, has good memories of racing against back in South African National Superbike Championships. Francois van der Merwe joining us as well. So yeah, hello and welcome all. Let's introduce my guest then. Once again, joining me is my good mate and top SA superstar, Sheridan Morais. Shez, how you doing, my bud?
Good, and you guys, Rob? Nice to be here again.
Yeah, Laka, it's awesome and great to have so many people joining in, because certainly MotoGP is grabbing us once again this year. It's been nothing less than fabulous at the first two rounds. But now, Shez, obviously there's the big talking point, and I would love to hear your comments on the performance of Brad Binder in Saturday's sprint race, because, ladies and gentlemen, I've known Shez now for over half my life, and I can tell you now, not much impresses Sheridan Morais. I went to the movie house and I watched Marley and Me. You know, we all know the dog movie Marley and Me, and Sheridan didn't even cry in that. I've watched great movies. I've heard great music. I've watched amazing things, and Shez doesn't get impressed by much. So Shez, give us your thoughts on Brad Binder's performance in the Saturday sprint race.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. It's like, I don't think we'll ever see that kind of thing again. And he's pulled off things like that in the past, but always in the lower categories. So although they've been amazing, it's not in the premier class, you know. And even if it was in a wet race, you would have been like, wow, that was like a big job, you know. And it wasn't. It was a dry race. So I mean, it was, yeah, that's mind blowing. I don't think there's a person in the world that watches any motorsport that hasn't heard of it firstly, and their mind is absolutely blown by it, just like mine now.
It really was a great performance. Just answering Lurisi Rasmus, lekker Rob, and Shez, how is the weather there? The weather here is really good. I almost missed the show because it's It's springy here now, so we had a nice 13 degrees, beautiful sunshiny day. So yeah, thanks for asking. Great day. It was an incredible performance, Shares. Coming from 15th on the grid, the sprint race is kind of, 12 or 14 laps, whatever it is, half rate distance. You have got, if you do not qualify front two rows, you have got no chance in hell of even being on the podium. Typical South African. I mean, you've done it plenty of times. Brad has done it plenty of times. We kind of just tear the script up and say, bugger that. And, Brad's game plan had to be get a good start and mix it up. But, I mean, that start was phenomenal. Now, I know there were some reports from journalism, and it's all just clickbait. But luck was a word that was mentioned a lot of times in many reports with Brad's race on Saturday. And to that, I say in MotoGP, you create your own luck. And Brad gambled. What amazed me with Brad's first 2 laps in that sprint race is that he was on a hard front tire. In turn 1, he was able to just throw it on the inside, hung it tight, made a couple of brilliant moves on the inside there, and then just took a gamble on this hard front tire that couldn't have been fully warmed up in the sprint race. We talked about Marquez in the main race in Portimao last weekend, where he didn't give it enough time to heat up, and you've got to give it heat. And here's Brad Binder on a hard front tire, chucking it in on a track that doesn't have much grip, and he just made those passes stick. And yeah, fortune favors the brave. We've heard Brad say it, we've heard a lot of people say it, and he just pulled off the perfect amount of skill, determination, racecraft, and desire to kind of make those moves stick.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a combination of things. Firstly, Brad, obviously, he's always run the hard front tire on that bike. It was only at the last round where questions were up in the air because Jack was the first guy to do something with the softer tires and so on and so forth. But everybody was on the hard front tire. If you look, I think there were 2 or 3 guys that went to the soft front or whatever the softer front was.
Yeah.
But a lot of people had the hard on. So Brad being a kid, we spoke about this the last one. Brad is a really smart guy, smart rider. So, I mean, at that level, with it being so close, I mean, all race long, whether it's the 12-lap race or whatever, but specifically that one being the 14-lap, I think it was. Everybody was doing the same lap times. From first all the way down to 15th place, they were all doing low 39s. So he knew he had to do it first lap, because if you, even on your second lap, if you've only scrubbed to the top 10, the chances of you getting to the top 3 are very, very slim. Especially around there, you could see how hard the passing was, Even the Ducatis didn't have that huge acceleration or straight line speed differential as they did in Portimao. So, Brad, like you said, he took the gamble, which you have to. I mean, people can say luck, but that's what racing's about. Every turn, every lap is about luck, because from your engine blowing to somebody T-boning you, it's all about luck. So, yeah, that saying that's very, very fitting, what you said. So I think he did it perfectly, because the time to strike in MotoGP, in any racing, but the time to strike, especially in MotoGP with it being so close, is that first lap, when the guys are a little bit cautious and maybe braking 5 meters earlier and wary. You got to bang it in, and exactly what he did. So yeah, I don't think you can get a better first lap. First of all, the start is where obviously most of the places were made. But then after that, he picked them off quickly. So, and other guys were stagnant or passing and then losing. So, yeah, he did a really good job of that.
Stephen Berry mentions here that it was the one article in particular that mentioned Brad's race being a luck, but it was more, Bezzecchi was the faster rider in the sprint race. He put in a lot more 38 lap times, especially compared to Brad, who just churned out those 139 lap times, which we knew he could do, even in the practice sessions. And that, it's, race pace is never the problem of Brad and the KTM. It's just being able to put in that fast lap time. And at a track like Portimao, where there's a little bit more grip, Jack Miller was able to use the soft front, soft rear combination. That helped the KTM get the faster lap time. But at a track like Argentina, and I still remember speaking to Brad in Portimao, and he just said, yeah, it's great that Jack's using the soft channel. It'll be great at tracks where we can use the soft. Argentina is one of those tracks where we're not going to be able to use the soft. So this is the mentality of Brad. He always looks at the bigger picture. It's like, great, the soft will help at tracks where there's grip, and that's fantastic. But 99% of the time, our bike we're going to be riding hard front, medium rear. So that is where our focus is, and that is where we're going to set this package up, and that is where we're going to aim this package at. It's great now, and we spoke about it last week, that Jack Miller can come in and bring in, the expertise of let's try this, let's do this, and make the soft work, and that'll be an option for tracks where there's grip. But Brad's main focus is hard front, medium rear. And getting back to the point of Bezzecchi, yes, he was the faster rider, but again, this is where Brad got it right. Bezzecchi and a lot of riders in that sprint race looked rushed, and they were like trying to pull these moves and hitting into each other and running wide and losing time. Brad just never made a mistake and got it spot on. So that is where the Brad brilliance came out, and he just churned out those laps. Once he got to the front, I kind of knew that you're not going to beat this guy, because he can churn out those same lap times, lap after lap. And Bezzecchi came out after the race and said as well, I closed onto the back of Brad, but closing on Brad Binder and passing Brad Binder is a complete different animal, especially when they went on board. I loved it when they went on board with Bezzecchi, and you could see he closed on Brad, but Brad just has this ability to break so late and close that line so well. And, he doesn't necessarily have the same mid-corner speed. That's still where the KTM sacrifices a bit compared to the Ducati. But he breaks so late, gets the bike stopped, and gets it out there. So it was a masterclass ride from Brad. And I think, I'm glad he got the praise that he deserved, especially like Ruan Dietrich says, Simon Crayfall mentioned after the flag with Brad Binder being taken out. Okay, that we'll talk about the taken out just now. But Brad got, I think, the praise that he deserves from it. It was a masterclass ride. It really was. Where I think he took advantage was certainly riders just kind of fluffing their lines. Alicia Spargo has come out and said he's kind of hasn't figured out this whole sprint race thing yet, because it's a different way. Yes, you've got to go flat out and attack, but you've got to have a certain racecraft to it, and Brad took full advantage of that. But what made this sprint race so exciting was just the giant question mark, because in Portimao, a lot of riders could run soft or medium. This time it was like, well, you've got to make the hard front work somehow. And the KTM made it work to the best of its ability. There's going to be racetracks where there's grip and where riders can run soft and medium front and rear tires. And I think that'll make the sprint racing even more exciting. But I mean, what's crazy for me to think is, and you touched upon it last week, is the formula's been there of shorter sprint races, and they work. And MotoGP is only finding this out now. And it's not a head scratcher that these sprint races are working.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, okay, the second race was wet, so obviously that changes things. But it used to be back in the day, everyone was like, oh, sweet, a wet race, it's going to be so exciting. Now that wet race was freaking boring, man. It was the biggest gap you've ever seen, I mean, the longer races are close these days as well, but they do spread out a bit, where there'll be 2 or 3 guys gone racing and then a big battle for fourth or whatever the case is. But these sprint races, I mean, that was incredible race. That was awesome race. And I mean, they weren't the only, like, you can't say stupid in racing, because I mean, unless it's blatant, done obvious, you can't say stupid, and I don't think you get that at that level. But like Nakagami's move on Quartararo was like crazy hard, like a stupid kind of move, But other than that, it was still a racing move. Where was he supposed to go? If he didn't go inside, he would have hit him anyway. So other than that, I mean, it was bumping. There was bumping and stuff, and I'm sure you're gonna talk about all of the bumping, and are they going too far with the rules and the calls on them and that. But I don't think there's a person that can fault the racing other than the riders that were penalized by those hard passes, Nobody can argue that the racing is the best that it's been, and everyone can't wait for the sprint races.
Yeah, look, that sprint race also threw a couple of curveballs, because riders like, Jorge Martin and Fabio Quartararo, I certainly, thought the sprint race would suit them ideally. Jorge Martin in Portimao was right up there perfectly, didn't quite get it right in this sprint race. And I mean, I was amazed with the lack of pace from the Aprilias, but we'll talk about that later as well. But it just shows you how vital that start is, because Brad got the start, got his racecraft, got his moves, got the right amount of aggression and racecraft to perfection to make those moves. Because there was Fabio Quartararo, kind of just got stuck in 11th, 10th, and just, as you said, just couldn't make those moves. If you are stuck in 10th place by the second lap, that is your race done and dusted. And that's the beauty of the sprint races, that these riders, and a lot more going into the sprint races after this now, are going to look at what Brad did and go, you know what? And this is where I rub my hands for future sprint races, because now for Brad to pull that off again, 15th to first in a sprint race, it would be fantastic. I don't think so, because a lot more riders are going to be kind of taking that approach now. Right, we've got to calm down in many ways, but we've got to get that kind of balance of calm and collected and aggression right. At the moment, Bezzecchi got it wrong in the sprint race over the weekend, because he knew he was the fastest rider, but he was trying to prove a point and just made all kinds of mistakes, whereas Brad got it calculated. But going forward, I think we're going to see the sprint race where a lot more guys are going to be watching what Brad did and go, right, that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, and I think it's gonna cause more havoc, especially if Dawn don't wake up with these like calling on every single pass that happens. Just like, in Portimao, we've spoken about all this stuff, but when I think it was Mia up the inside of Quartararo and they penalised it, it's ridiculous. So I think it's going to make it exciting in that regard. I just hope Dawn catch a wake up and start like treating this as racing and not a track day, But yeah, I think, like you said, Brad, the chance of seeing that again is so slim, because so many things come into it, and number one being luck, but that's what it's all about. The luck of you making it through from the back of the grid at that level on the first lap to being second is so slim. So, if anyone can, he's done it in previous classes and that as well. So, but the goal is surely not to be starting from the back of the grid, and we spoke about this again last week, that they need to starting at the front, because, anyone from that top 15, any of those guys, had they been top 3 on the first lap, their result would have been at least 5 positions better, So, gaps were formed and stuff, but that's the thing. If you're at the front of the field, you're not being passed by somebody and held up by this guy and that. Because if you're all doing the same lap times and you get held up by 1 second through bad passes, then how are you going to close that 1 second up, So that's surely got to be the goal. Ducati, obviously, all of them are really good at that on a lap time because of the straight line speed. But I think watching that racing, it was a very different straight because of the fast speed that they came onto it. So Ducati didn't seem to have that massive advantage. But looking at it, you could see Morbidelli did a fantastic job. But it was just so hard for the Yamahas to pass anybody, because they just don't have that little bit. By the time they're on the braking marker, no matter how close they were, they're 10 meters back. And at that level, to pass from 10 meters back is really slim chance. The only one that seemed to do it was Zarco.
Yeah, it's a fantastic recipe, and I think it certainly made Saturdays more exciting. Just I was luckily to be at Portimao, but I watched the Argentina race from home, and Saturday was more exciting because after the qualifying, you're not like, oh God, now what? I know there's dishes to do and gardening to do, and now you kind of have an excuse to like, sorry, kids, wife, I'm still watching it. There's still racing happening, which was fantastic. To finish off on the KTM subject quickly here, a question from Gordon De Beer. What do you think KTM this year? I think they're right up there. My opinion, it was another great weekend for them. Yes, qualifying didn't go well. The practice sessions weren't necessarily good, but that was only because, and this is still their handbrake, is Jack proved in Portimao, if you can run the soft, the KTM's just as good as the Ducati in many ways. In Argentina, at a low grip track, he couldn't. He had to run hard front, medium rear, and they kind of suffered in the once off fast lap time, but their race pace is right there. As the weekend went, Brad proved in the sprint races that they've got race pace if they can get a good start, and Jack proved in the wet that they had good wet pace, because Jack, I know he wasn't very pleased with sixth place, listening to his debrief and that, but I think it was a fantastic result. The KTM is getting this more complete package. Even Brad, after the bad Sunday main race, his debrief was, that's racing, it is what it is, we move on. But heading into Kota, I feel like our package is a lot better than we've had the last 2 years. And overall, I think they're getting it right in many areas. I still don't think it's by any means the complete package to fully challenge for the world title yet, but certainly a lot closer to the others and going in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree. I think gone are the days, like even when it was really close, sometimes Brad would have a bad qualifying and be 1 second off. Whereas now we've got to look at it and, yeah, he qualified 15th, but he was only 0.6 off something. That's half a second. It's nothing, So they're definitely closer, but yeah, unfortunately, these days you've got to be 0.2 to just be on the front 3 rows, so it's getting that close for qualifying, whereas in the race they're able to do the same lap times, and this is a recurring thing. This has been for the past 3 seasons, that their race pace is always good, always manageable, but the problem is those first laps. If Brad doesn't get through the traffic, then you pretty much your position is going to change by 2 or 3 positions. But other than that, you need like a Brno where it's extremely slippery and things change, and then you have a big advantage if it suits you. But yeah, I think the moral is, like every weekend we're saying, that qualifying needs to be the answer, because risking to get to 10 positions on lap 1 is it's a spell for disaster,
Yeah, and that's the problem. Yes, it was fantastic. He came from 15th to 1st. Brilliant. But there's a lot of risk involved in that. And yes, the risk paid off in this instance, but we can't, and he can't, and KTM can't expect to do that week in, week out, because it's kind of a needle in a haystack, or a pink unicorn. It was fantastic. Yeah. And I don't want to take away from that fantastic, but it's not going to happen very often, especially now. And
I do think that it's maybe this weekend was them trying to persist with a softer tire, and that maybe that possibly ruined qualifying a little bit. We don't know the exact details, but if you look at it realistically, the bike had to be better for a qualifying lap, because in the race, Brad in front, not with anybody to tow him forward or anything like that, did a 39.0, which is the same lap time he did in qualifying. So, Bezecchi, Bezecchi did a few half 38s, but that was with Brad in front, trying to close him out of desperation to win the race, So, I think, you got it. If Brad was 0.3 or 0.4 quicker than that, there's his start that we're all dreaming for. So, I think it's probably just a combination of a few little things, but I have no doubt that they're there. And if they can just find that base setup and stop going between things, I think that it'll be an answer quickly, because as soon as they always return to that setup that they use in the races, his lap times are always there in the race. Even Portimao, his first race wasn't his best one, but if you look at the lap times and that, he was doing the same lap times as the leaders.
Yeah, so I think, look, the bigger picture here is KTM are on the right track. Yes, the same problem of that once-off good qualifying lap time is still there, although, like you said, they've closed it in many ways by 0.4 of a second. Let's take Argentina here. Instead of a second, it's 0.4 of a second. As Stephen, I love having Stephen Berry on the show, because he kind of just answers all the questions in the comments, and I can just talk here. It's fantastic. But certainly they've improved, and I think that's what we need to focus on. Is the improvement there, because in the sprint race they were competitive, like you said, on his own at a track with very low grip. Brad was able to just churn those lap times, and Jack's lap times were also really good. And he just said he just kind of got a good start, but he just got bunched in. He could have probably gone with the same lap times of Brad had he had the track to himself. Brad's biggest advantage in that race was that he made those moves early on. He was able to get away with them. If on that second lap he was, and this was a little bit lucky or a bit of skill involved as well, he came onto that back straight, and Alex Marquez had that huge moment. Now, in a situation, if Brad had T-boned him there or really had to roll off, lost all that momentum, the race would have gone in a completely different direction for Brad. But he missed him, got the momentum, made the pass, and that kind of helped him set up the race. So yes, there were situations that he avoided that helped set up the race that he was in. But again, fortune favors the brave. He puts himself in those situations to be able to take advantage.
And if you watch that race again, you'll no doubtedly see that on the first, if you concentrate on it, those first 2-3 laps, you watch how many times Brad actually loses on the brakes, because they'll brake 5 meters too late, but then he just gains it in mid-turn or exit, he passes them. So like I always say, Brad, he's really smart, He doesn't concentrate on what the other guy's doing, because that's going to be the faster way, It's not because he's going to brake 10 meters later that it's better. Brad was composed, even though he made aggressive moves. He was composed, and when he knew his limit, when he braked at his limit, the other guys went past theirs, and he made clean passes that way. So yeah, he's very calculated. He's very, very clever, and you can't say anything, but everything he put into that race paid off. So.
Yeah, I agree. Andre Essex got a good question here. Rob Portman, KTM keep on referring to the electronics. It's the whole bike, or is it down to one or two functions? So, Andre, being at the track in Portimao and speaking to Jack certainly quite a lot, coming from Ducati, I was quite keen to have good chats with Jack. And Jack's a fantastic guy. Every time he would come to the debrief, I'd be waiting outside because the media debrief room was just so busy. I'd kind of just have an ear there. But every time he would come up and greet me, and he would have a little 2-minute chat with me, whether it be just before the media debrief, just before going out on track or anything. He really did make a lot of time for me. And, I must take my hat off to Jack for, we're not, I wouldn't say we're close mates, but I certainly met him over the last couple of years at the races, and he knows who I am. And it was just great that he took the time up to do that. Anyway, I'd ask him these kind of questions, and he said the biggest thing that he wanted to work out on the bike was engine braking. He said Ducati have got the engine braking spot on, and I can see that standing trackside, coming down, especially Portimao, down into turn 1, where, Shez, you brake hard going down the hill, the rear comes, and then you need that perfect amount of engine braking to not give you too much. You need enough to kind of help you slow the bike down for the right-hander that closes in. But at the same time, you want to be able to freewheel and carry the momentum there. And over the years, Brad has spoken about, KTM, just the electronics were holding him back too much. He likes to slide the bike, and the engine braking was kind of restricting that. We spoke about it last week, that many times these modern day MotoGP bikes and production superbikes are just very restricting with the electronics, and that's where it's an aerodynamic and electronics game in MotoGP in world racing these days. And Jack Miller kind of cured that, or found a good resolution to that in Portimao, because we saw this Jack Miller sliding this KTM in, and then all of a sudden you saw this Brad Binder being able to slide the bike in again. We saw it in Argentina in the sprint race. Brad was just sliding this bike in, riding the bike a bit more how he wanted to. So certainly engine braking and traction control were two big things. When I watched Portimao 2 years ago, coming over the crest onto the front straight, that KTM was just cutting, like ga 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 ga. You could hear it and see it just cutting, where the other bikes were, just keeping the momentum going there. So electronics is a big thing that the KTM have worked on. They've brought in, Ducati minds in the electronic department. People keep going on about, the beam chassis and the WP suspension, and I do certainly think it is a little bit of a handbrake, especially when 99.9% of the field are in Poland, and the non-trellis chassis. They've got all that development and data from all of that to be able to use. KTM literally just have their 4 bikes to gather data from, and their 4 riding styles. So that does handbrake them a little bit. But certainly, speaking to Jack, not so much to bad, but certainly Jack, is electronics. They found something, and you could see that by the way the bike's moving into corners now, and certainly coming out. Now it's just a case of being able to finish the corner off a bit better. You would have seen, especially on the onboard with Bezzecchi, Brad and the KTM and Jack have to just kind of hold the bike up on the brake a little bit later. They still can't turn into that tighter line with the brake on as the Ducati can. That's the big advantage of the Ducati and certainly the Aprilia, is that stability under braking, being able to trail brake into the turn and finish the corner off more. The Hondas and the KTMs have just got to hold the brake up a little bit more. So while the Ducatis are turning here, these guys are still there, and they're able to finish the corner. The KTMs are making a 3 apex corner in many ways. So, yeah. That's where the WP suspension and certainly this beam, trellis frame, and you'll know, Shares, even on a Super Duke, you ride a Super Duke, which is by no means a MotoGP bike, but it's that trellis frame, and it's got those characteristics of, you've got to brake deep with that thing, run it, square the corner off, and drill it in. Whereas, Ducati V4, it's just got that sweet, and certainly an Aprilia RS V4, just you can roll that thing like an old Grand Prix bike.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt it's different, but it just shows again what a good job KTM are doing and have done to have come from nothing, nobody in this game, to where they are now, winning races and possibly fighting for championships even. So I think they're doing a good job. It's just, I think it gets tough when they're trying to compare. I'd assume they're trying to compare to Ducati, having bought all of their staff now. But it's hard to compare because you're comparing oranges with apples. So literally orange. Literally. And so, but they're doing a good job. I mean, in terms of electronics, they can obviously adjust according to what Ducati is, because even whether it's World Superbikes or MotoGP, Ducati always has been the best in that regard with the electronics. So, they've got the people there changing things and trying things all the time. So, I think that's going to help them a lot, because even when you watch the Ducatis, even Bezzecchi in the rain was backing it in. So it's just that fine line of doing that enough and too much, So, but yeah, I think they're finding their way with that.
Now, Stefan's got a good point here. It doesn't cut the ignition; it retards the timing. So it's not like this. It's such a small noise. It really is. It's not this massive noise that I'm saying here, but it's literally this. It's like it almost goes hollow, like it just cuts the power for a split second compared to the Ducatis and that just are able to carry the momentum, and that is a big advantage. That's where Ducati for me is certainly under hard braking. I watch Pecco and Bezzecchi, certainly. You watch them brake, they can brake hard, and the electronics kind of just gather the bike, let them slide, but gather it, and just able to carry that momentum in the turns, where certainly the Hondas and the KTM still fighting a little bit more, although it is getting better. There's no doubt about that. Lorius Erasmus has a question. Another 2 laps. Would Bez overtake Brad, or did he pace himself seeing the last laps left? I think Bez certainly had the slightly better pace than Brad, as you said, because he had he had Brad as the carrot in front of him, and he had the determination of that first place. The sprint race as well for a Bezzecchi, it's perfect. Is Bezzecchi a complete overall title contender? Sure, after the main race on Sunday, you would say so, but a Bezzecchi, a Di Giannantonio, Marini, a Martin, those kind of mentalities are built for a sprint race. Bezzecchi has got a lot of Simoncelli in him that I can see, a lot of that charisma and that Simoncelli had, and that lot of go all out kind of determination. So yeah, but the saying in racing, it's one thing to catch someone, it's another thing to pass him. And Bezzecchi was not by far, but a couple of tenths the faster rider, but he had the carrot of Brad. And another 2 laps, who knows? But ultimately, there wasn't an
no doubt he would have gone for a move. Of course, he would have gone for a move, just like if Brad had caught up to him. So he would have definitely gone for a move. But passing Brad's not so easy, because he's got quite a unique riding style in terms of braking so late and then pitching it in. So no doubt he would have gone for it, but luckily there wasn't enough time to see that.
Yeah, there wasn't enough. Brad planned it to perfection. That's where we're going to leave it. Shares, I want to get onto the Dorna and the penalties and everything. So you mentioned the Joan Mir incident in the sprint race in Portimao. You can see it on camera. Fabio Quartararo runs a tiny little bit wide. There's a line on the inside. Joan Mir tries to take the gap. There's contact. Joan Mir crashes and falls, which is a penalty in itself, because now he's just cocked his whole race up. But anyway, racing, I was told, you were told, everyone's told, it's why we love Valentino Rossi, it's why we love Marc Marquez. If there's a gap in racing, you take it. Certainly now in a MotoGP sprint race, more than ever, you take a gap when you see it. So anyway, that incident, Joan Mir runs on the inside, contact, he falls, Quartararo ruins his race a little bit because he's run wide and he comes back on. Joan Mir gets a penalty, a long lap penalty for the main race. Taka Nakagami's move in the main race on Sunday in the wet was an identical move in many ways. He just did it a lot earlier in the corner. Was it
if Quartararo didn't pick up, it was like down definitely for Quartararo.
Yes, but it's happened to all of us. It's happened to every single person that's been on a racetrack competitively. That kind of move has happened. Do you like it happening to you? No, you don't. You hate it. Have you done it to other people before? Yes, you do. Like you said, it's called racing. So I was quite happy that there was no penalty given there for Nakagami. It was a hard move, yes, but it's motorcycle racing. Okay, if you start penalizing each and every move like that, you can't call it racing anymore. Call it scripted guys riding around a racetrack. Okay, so I was glad there was no penalty. But then this is where the inconsistency comes in. So then why was Joan Mir's a penalty? Because Quartararo and Nakagami, no one crashed. Yes, Quartararo was pushed wide and his race, in as he says, was ruined. I don't think so. I don't think he was going to finish better than 6th place or 7th place anyway. But so why does Joan Mir get a penalty and he's crashed himself? This is where the inconsistency comes in. Okay, and then
a racing pass.
Exactly. It's like, where does this end? So you want to dish out penalties for many situations, but you don't want to consistently back it up. And this is where my problem with this is, and I've got the exact same problem. You and many people that are commenting here have got the same problem, is let the guys race. Yes, if it's a stupid move, like Marquez is in Portimao, because as you said, the mentality of Marc was the mistake. He knew that he didn't have the heat in the front tire, yet he still risked it, and that is what caused the accident. So should he get penalized for that? 100% yes, he should get penalized for that. But Nakagami's incident, was it hard? Yeah. Can you imagine motocross racing is that every time there was a block pass put on, a guy would get penalized?
Exactly.
You would
create something out of the sport we love.
Exactly. So my consistency is the consistency is my biggest issue here, and Dorna need to now just get rid of it for me.
Yeah, definitely.
Just get rid of it.
Definitely. Even Fabio, when he did complain, but he didn't moan specifically about him. He didn't say, "Oh, woe is me, I'm the only one," blah blah. His actual moan wasn't at Nakagami's pass. His moan was that Nakagami did that to me, which ruined my whole race, but Dorna did nothing about it. Yet they penalized people for doing that a race pass. So he was kind of just mentioning what we're mentioning. I don't think he was saying, "Oh, I'm the only one in the world that's whatever." So, so I think he's on the right side actually. But I mean, every race people are moaning about this now. So when are Dorna going to get this shit together and sort it out? Because they're going to create a scenario where people don't want to pass each other.
Especially in sprint races, which is designed to, this is going to be all-out racing, you have to pass. But then they're slapping them on the wrist when they do see a gap and they try and pass. Stephen Berry mentions, Sasaki's, had to drop one place in the Moto3 race. The beauty of Moto3 is that bumping and bashing and fighting. And if you're going to start strangling that, it's a big problem. Ruan Dietlief says here, Crayfar mentioned Taka's move this weekend. He feels as a penalty or something causing Fabio to go wide. He reckons Taka had no pace, nothing, and goes and destroys Fabio's race for nothing, pulling an aggressive mood. So to me, I disagree with Simon Crayfar on that, and we'll certainly grab Simon Crayfar later in the year, and I'll tell him that I disagree with him. Because, okay, Fabio also, like you said, it kind of, he mentions that it ruined his race. He's not bitching too much that it was a good, hard race move. Well, not a good, hard race move, but a hard race move. Fabio, I think Fabio feels hard done by because his move last year on Aleix Espargaro at Assen was kind of the same. Fabio knew he didn't have the pace to run with the Ducatis, so he had to make moves early on. So he tried to shove it on the inside of Aleix Espargaro, got it wrong. He crashed, ran Aleix Espargaro off the track. Aleix came back on it.
Yeah.
He got penalized for that. He got a long lap penalty for that for the following race. But again, he just landed up cocking his own race up because he crashed. So I can understand where Quattraro feels hard done by, and it's again because of the consistency. He's looking back at that going, well, there's no difference. Nakagami ruined my race. It was a lunge. I don't mind racing, but I got a penalty for it. And Simon Crayfar saying that, I understand what Simon Crayfar is saying, but a Nakagami doesn't look at on that track and go, I don't have the pace of him, so let me not pass him. If that's an ability a racer must have, you're not a racer. Don't be on that racetrack.
Yeah, and I think where Simon is probably leaning towards, and Fabio actually mentioned it as well, is that it's the same guys doing these things. So kind of like Marc, he's got a reputation for doing silly things, like going way over the top. Nakagami's also got that reputation of riding into people and trying to pass 4 people at one time. So if it was Brad doing that, then it was, once like he did with Valentino that time, like it's once in a blue moon happening where he misses a brake marker or the wind catches him or something like that. Then people overlook it and that's one of those things. But I guess if it's the same guys always doing these things, then maybe then they do want to actually see something happen about it. But I don't know. I just think Dorna need to. I mean, some of the stuff you'd never say they've got racing personnel on the board there. Sometimes you feel like it's a bunch of pencil pushers there making all the decisions. So I don't know. I guess they have to sort it out because otherwise it's going to start getting boring.
And, talking about the consistency and same with Fabio and Nakagami. So Fabio gets demoted from 9th place to 10th place in the sprint race because he passed Nakagami under a yellow flag. Okay. He gets a 1-second penalty. When have you ever heard? So in qualifying and practices, a whole lap is scrapped if they improve their sector under a yellow flag.
Exactly.
So Quattraro risks a pass under a yellow flag, and we I knew growing up, if you passed under a yellow flag, it was a 30-second penalty. Like your race is
Yeah,
over.
that or at least one position.
Yeah, exactly. He gets a 1 second penalty. So where's the consistency in this? So you put out yellow flags, you lose a whole lap in your qualifying in that, which is detrimental to your qualifying and practice. But if you pass in the race, you get 1 second under a yellow flag. Well, me, if I'm in the race and I know I'm going to be faster than a Nakagami by a second a lap, I'm going to pass him under a yellow. Because I lose sitting behind the guy under a yellow flag. I wake up in a second. It's
exactly
like,
1 second.
This is where I don't. This is where I don't understand, and then I look at, where they dish out these long lap penalties for good race, or not good racing moves, but racing moves. Okay, racing moves. I would be dishing out penalties more for these riders, and I saw it in the Moto3 race. I think it was Ortola crashing, picks his bike up, comes back on the track, pouring shit and dust and and everything all over the track. And riders in qualifying, and I saw it at Portimao, Bastianini crashes out in qualifying, and then he takes 10 years to pick up and pull his bike and find the gear. And, Jamal Masia as well in the Moto3 race, he picks up and then he walks slowly. The marshal's like, come, my bud, we can't take the yellow flag down until you are off the track.
Exactly.
So I would penalize these guys more. Jamal Masia stands up perfectly good, nothing wrong with him, and he takes 2 minutes to walk off the track, knowing that the yellow flag's out there. We saw it in South African racing where, a guy would bend the rules and go, right, there's 3 laps left. I'm in second place here. I'm going to crash, lie down, pretend I'm dead. So the red flag comes out, because then it's declared a race. And in those years, it didn't go back. It went back a lap. So that guy would score second place. And you were like, so this is where I don't understand. I would be penalizing those kind of moves, right? If you pick your bike up,
it's just logic.
It's logic. It's simple.
Just logic.
They're focusing their attention in the wrong places. They're focusing their attention on the racing, on the racetrack, where there's racing going on, rather than the shit that's actually going on behind that should be penalized.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's pathetic. It irritates. I nearly headbutted my computer this weekend, and that would have been a shame because I only have a computer.
Some of the stuff is ridiculous, and especially in Argentina, it lends itself to that because it's so hard to pass in it. So there was a lot of stuff, and you looked at it, and the weather conditions also mucked it up a bit. So I don't know. They just got to get there. I mean, we spoke exactly about the same thing in Portimao, so they just got to get it right now. They got to get the team managers in there, or rider reps or something like that in there, and sort this thing out, because it's just going too far.
Yeah, they're getting it wrong. Like they reduced the Moto2 race because of rain, to a 14 lapper, which was a bit unfair to the Moto2 guys, because like a guy like Darren Binder would have just progressed more in that race. It just, we're here to race for 22 laps. Don't make it 14 laps. And then, and then in the MotoGP race, it rains and it's the full 24 lap, and like you said, a very boring race. So they're just getting it wrong in many ways, and they've got this formula for success because it is the greatest sport on the planet. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to manage these riders. And it's not like the years gone by where you had 5 fast riders lapping people and could make passes. You have got the fastest riders in the world all within 0.6 of a second of each other.
Well, that's the difference. Yeah. Back then it was 5 guys on special tires and bikes, and the rest of them probably as talented or maybe better. Look at the cases of Anthony Gobert, these kinds of people that even on the crappy machinery still showed glimpses of what they could do. So whereas now everybody's on the exact same tires, exact same everything. They all got a fair opportunity, just different brands, that's all. So it's way, way, way closer. So you can't look at it from back in the day. You can't compare rules to back then and look at things how you did back then. So it's a combination of just using logic, like you said, and then just working in the modern era of 2023.
Like Stephen Berry and a couple of people also point out here the long lap penalty. Now, the long lap penalty, I'm still on the fence with it. In some instances, I think from a racing point of view, back in the day, when I had a jump start and you knew you jumped the start, you're like, oh, that's a 30-second penalty. It's game over. My race is over. Do I park it and not waste my tires because I'm on a budget here? Or, now a long lap penalty. Aaron Canet had 2 long lap penalties and he lost a total of about 4 seconds.
Yes.
And he lost 2 positions, but the way the long lap penalty was laid out, he kind of railed it and got this beautiful momentum that the 2 positions he lost, he could just make up again. And there's some tracks where the long lap penalties are like a better racing line in many ways.
Yes,
So it's not even a penalty. And this
Yeah.
is where they need to get it right. I knew, do not jump start because it's a 30-second penalty.
Yeah.
So why not keep it at that? Because then you're not going to get anyone taking. I knew if I passed under a yellow flag, it was a 30-second penalty. So don't pass under a yellow flag. Now it's like, okay, well, you've got extra runoff. So if you break late or whatever, it's fine. You can pick it up and run wide. Or if you pass under a yellow, don't worry, it's a 1 second penalty. If you jump start, it's a long lap. If I'm Aaron Canet in that, I'm going to jump start. I'm going to jump start and I'm going to have a 10-second lead by turn 1 because they might double long lap penalty. If I'm in the 3rd, 4th row of the grid, I'm jumping start all day long because I'm going to climb 10 positions and I'm going to maybe lose 2 or 3 from my long lap penalty. Big whoopee because I would never have been there in the first place.
I do get it. I mean, that's an exaggeration because in the actual riders' briefings, when I've been to them in the GP and in the Superbike, obviously they do explain to you that this is the consequence for jump start. But if you are going to try and find a loophole and come from the back of the grid to first in turn 1, which is almost what Brad did without a jump start. But if you're going to do that, then obviously they're going to change. They'll black flag you or something like that. But I do get where you're going with it, and you are right. If there's bigger consequence, a set out consequence, then it does make people think about things a bit more generally anyway. But the first and foremost, you've got to look at what Dorna is, and first and foremost, it's a money maker. So I think a lot of these things that we bitch and moan about, if you go and think about it as a businessman, probably a lot of it's just because they want to make their racing closer. I don't know. Maybe they're hard about these passes because they know people aren't going to pass as much, which will keep everyone bunched together. I don't know. Definitely these penalties of a long lap penalty, 100%. If a guy's leading and now he's got to do a long lap penalty, worst case is going to be in 3rd, 5th place. So it still keeps him in the race, still keeps it exciting. So any questions in racing, you've got to always just think about who's making money because any decisions they make, it's about money. Safety is this big front and stuff, and I mean, obviously nobody wants to get injured. But first and foremost, Dawn is there to make money. So a lot of the questions are always answered when you look at it in that way as well.
Yeah, it's the sad reality of it. You're 100% right, and this kind of touches upon that point. Joe Alves, Portimao needs new gravel traps. What have you heard? So there's this question now that Portimao might not be on the calendar for next year because of safety. I spent a lot of time with a couple of inside people at Portimao, they are in that shares that are involved with the circuit, and that they've changed that gravel trap 3 times. All 3 times, the gravel that has been used has been approved by the FIM and Dorna. It is approved FIM Dorna gravel. So I understand I was one of those guys that was like, yes, that gravel is thick. And a lot of riders have said, you tumble in there, you know about it, it's rocks. But it's FIM Dorna approved. They've changed it 3 times. Okay, so whose fault is this? Is it Portimao, or is it Dorna, or is it the fact that the riders are just pushing at a limit now where doesn't matter what gravel you have in there. You could have fucking 3-ply toilet paper. You're going to hurt yourself because it is motorcycle racing. These guys are doing 300 million Ks an hour. Portimao is a kind of up, even though it's up and down, it is a stupid fast racetrack. So I understand them saying, this and this and this and this. There were a lot of injuries out of Portimao because there's more on the line for MotoGP riders. They are pushing it harder and faster than any motorcycle rider has ever pushed it because there's so much more at stake. So it's not necessary. I'm not completely saying the track is innocent, but I'm saying Dorna and everyone can't just point these fingers that it's this fault and it's this fault and this fault. MotoGP is on a level it has never, ever been on before. It has got the fastest riders in the entire world pushing every single millimeter, every single corner, finding the limits. And this is what's going to happen when you have these riders doing it.
The track itself is anyone that's even just watched there, never mind having ridden there, will see that the track does lend itself to fast crashes. So I mean, most turns are off camber. I think all turns are blind. It's a really fast track, and it lends itself to those kind of things because there's so many off camber and blind turns. So I mean, when you look at it, the MotoGP bikes weigh a lot less. They've got much grippier tires, so they're much faster in the turns. But like we said last week, the lap times between the Superbike and the MotoGP around there are kind of the same. And World Superbikes are also crashing big like that and whatever. But like you say, it's not up to Portimao. I know how hungry Portimao have been for racing. They do everything in their power to get there. So like you said, they've changed the gravel according to what they're told. And the people that tell them these things are Dorna. Whether Dorna actually take the advice of the riders or not, I don't know. But it does come from Dorna. And I mean, even when you look at Pole's crash, that was horrific. And the fact that in 2023 a MotoGP rider can hit the wall, it's absolutely shocking. But you can't look at Portimao for that. Portimao, the people that run the track aren't safety officers. It's Dorna, and that's why Dorna, when there was talk of a MotoGP race coming here, they came here 4 times to inspect tracks and do all this kind of stuff. It's their job to handle all that kind of stuff. So I mean, it was quick. Everybody jumped on it and said, "Oh, hit the wall, the track this, the track that." But that's Dorna's job. That's got nothing to do with the circuit. It's up to the track whether it's Formula One, Superbike, or MotoGP. It's up to the organizers to go there. They've got a whole safety commission to do that kind of thing. So yeah, I think it's definitely in their hands, and obviously they'll keep quiet as long as everyone's blaming somebody else. They'll keep quiet because it suits them. You know?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's officially the last time I'll ever go to a MotoGP race because my media pass will be denied by Dorna forever now, thanks to Shez. But Shez, I agree with you. You know, the Kyalami thing. Fact. No, it's fact because Kyalami, yes, there are places that needs to be changed to host a MotoGP race. But I have no doubt that if Kyalami had come up with a big enough figure, Dorna would have quite happily overlooked those safety concerns and said,
yeah.
No, it's again, if I don't go to a MotoGP race, we know what. But as you said, money talks these days, and it's not just motorsport, not just MotoGP, it's in everything. Money talks. So that is the end game. Just a couple of people talking about the Moto2 race. Why was it kind of shortened? It was because the riders had lack of wet weather time. They didn't, the MotoGP guys had the morning warm up on Sunday for a bit of wet weather. The Moto2 riders never. So it was a safety, just shorten the race. And also because, the lap times are obviously a lot slower in the wet, the race would have taken longer, and then it might have just delayed things to the MotoGP, which I can understand. But at the same time, you're not dealing with amateurs here. You're dealing with the world's best riders. Let them go race. They know what they're doing, and if they don't, they land on their head and they hurt themselves, or they crash and lose points. That's motorcycle racing. So that's what frustrated me with the reducing a race. Okay, I can understand it's a safety thing and that, but it's the best riders in the world. Let them go ride. So talking about MotoGP, there were a couple of big topics. I mean, we've highlighted the penalties and stuff. Give us your impressions. Fabio Quartararo and Yamaha just doesn't seem to be the same thing. Yes, the bike's a bit faster. We saw with Morbidelli, the Ducati's not being able to kind of blow past him like they did last year. But now they've found this horsepower, and Fabio is just complaining bitterly about a bike that doesn't stop now and has no rear grip. And to me, Fabio is kind of going back to his 2 years or 3 years ago Fabio, which is a bit like Maverick Vinales. You do that. It's not my fault. It's the bike's. The bike's not performing, so there's nothing I can do. And he needs to kind of get himself back out of that, because if he doesn't, it's not going to change. I look at this situation where Fabio Quartararo give him a Yamaha with new Michelin tires on a track that grips. He loves it. He loves it all day long. Put him on a track like this where grip is a bit lower, and Frankie Morbidelli seemed to enjoy it more. We saw the results where he's a little bit more, he likes the bike moving. Frankie Morbidelli does this ranch riding, and he likes the bike moving, and he looked very comfortable. Frankie Morbidelli around the track, the bike's moving. But where there's low grip, Quartararo just seems to switch off, and he can't find a solution.
And I mean, it's such a fine line. Confidence is a massive thing for anyone, and with someone fragile like him, I mean, it was very noticeable last year when his bike was so slow, and he'd still pull off the win or podium. You wouldn't know how, because he'd come from so far back on a straight and make a pass within a calculated pass like 3 turns later. So I think it's just a mental thing, like you say, and the only person that can get him out of a mental rut is himself. So hopefully he can get out of that. Last time it took him quite a while, but he snapped out of it quickly, and then all of a sudden was positive. And I think it was last year where he admitted he had a bad attitude and this and that and that. So I think he's just in a mental rut, which is pretty easy to get into. But now that you mentioned Morbidelli, I keep thinking to myself, we haven't mentioned him. I think he did an amazing job on a bike at 100%. obviously they can do a lap time, but it's hard to race on that bike. You could visually see it. I mean, he was braking. Anybody that tried to line him up on the brakes, you could visually see him pull away from them on the brakes. So I think he did an awesome job, and I hope that this form continues and we see him close to the front as well.
I do. I hope he can get out of it. I do think it's just a little bit of throwing my toys out the cot thing. But as you said, I think in some ways he's rightfully can say that, because the Yamaha is not there. Yamaha didn't make the progress they needed to, and there's only the two of them. And there's Frankie Morbidelli with his data, and he hasn't been anywhere near the game. And then there's Fabio's data, which I think is just two completely different datas. If you look at Jack and Brad, I think in many ways they're working together, and that's coming nicely. And Jack's bringing all that data that he from Ducati and all those years of Ducati. You've got a Morbidelli who only knows a Yamaha from MotoGP, and you've got a Quartararo that only knows a Yamaha from MotoGP. So what are they actually bringing in to change this package now? And the Yamaha, the Japanese Yamaha especially, are very much like this. If you look at Honda, credit has to be given to them because they are Japanese, but they have kind of just gone in every single area. Have they confused themselves? I think so. I think they've gone into too many areas, but they're willing to explore different areas. Whereas Yamaha are still like, nope, this is it. Come tell us what your problem. And I saw it last year with Darren. Tell us what your problems are. We'll kind of make a note of it and throw it in the dustbin, and then carry on. What Japan is. So I'm, Frankie Morbidelli, fantastic, great. He's got to now back it up 2, 3, 4 races at least in a row. Then we'll see if something has changed. I think it's going to be a tough quota for them. I think Jerez will be the really good yardstick for them, because a lot of guys and a lot of bikes can go fast around Jerez. It just seems to be that track that a lot of people can go fast at. So if they are still battling there, for me, it's their title, their title over. So still a big question mark around Yamaha there. There's no doubt about that. They were another one that had a disaster of a weekend at a track that they won at last year with the Leish. Looked fantastic in practice, but again, Aprilia just seemed to be, once things don't go their way, and I think it's also Maverick's mentality. One thing don't go their way, they just don't seem to recover.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of that's got to do with Maverick. I have no doubt that if he was at the front of the field, he would have put up a good race. But being in the position of fighting and stuff, that's not he. He's a little bit like Danny Pedrosa, like all the skill in the world, maybe the most talented and smartest rider. But when it comes down to a battle, just doesn't have that little edge. A little bit fragile, I guess. Leish, I think he's in a weird place, because he's always been like this guy that's been idolized by every person at Aprilia. Everyone's been bowing down to him, and now he's getting people coming on in that can match what he's doing and better at, actually, with the right opportunity. So I think he's just in an awkward place. He's not slow by any means. He's still going fast and got a good race pace in it. But I think, but a few things like rushing to try and get forward, first of all to the front, secondly ahead of his teammates and other people on Aprilia's. I don't know. Last year, for a long time, the championship was looking good for him, but I think this year it's not started off good. And I can't see it getting better, because just like last year, it actually started getting worse. You hope that it's going to, because both are highly rated riders and both have put in the hard yards getting to where they are. But Maverick, I hope that the championship can still be within grasp. But it's something's going to have to change there, because this weekend they did have what seemed to be one of the best bikes.
I think they're doing all the bad things the right way. They've got 4 bikes. Only had 3. I think they missed Miguel Oliveira. Certainly, Miguel would have made a great race of it on Sunday in the wet conditions. We know how good he is in those. That would have been valuable data for Aprilia. I don't think it's all doom and gloom yet. I think they maybe got ahead of themselves coming into Argentina. As you said, I think Alesia's biggest problem this year is trying to replicate what he did last year, and I think he's putting a lot of pressure on himself to replicate that. And it was a fantastic year. Let's not sugarcoat it. It was a fantastic year. But with that fantastic year, now comes the pressure of you've got to do it again. And he's a year older. I think he's 35, 36 now. A year older in MotoGP is 10 years older in normal life, because it takes a toll on you. It's all that travel, he's got his family with him. It's airport to hotel, it's a lot on them. And I think he's put the pressure on him as well. As you said, as Aprilia's captain, he now has a teammate that he knows is faster than him. He knows Maverick is faster than him. And he's got this pressure of, well, you've got to go and perform and do what you did last year. Everyone's raving about the Aprilia, Simon Crafar. All of us are saying that Aprilia is the best package. You're on it. You've got to perform. So I think they went into the Argentina weekend like, this is our weekend, our bike workshop. We won here last year. Certainly the free practice sessions were going well, and it just all imploded in the sprint and the main race. So I don't think it's all doom and gloom. I think they're going to just carry on with the success. When Miguel comes back, I think that he's going to be a massive asset to them, and I think they're going to just carry on this great work that they've been doing. Because even, like I said, watching trackside, it is for sure one of the best bikes, and it's not that far away from Ducati. It really isn't. Ducati at the moment have just got quantity and a bit of quality over Aprilia. Yes, Aprilia have got Maverick and Miguel and Aleix. Raul hasn't quite done it for me, but Ducati, if you look at the amount of bikes and the riders that they've got on their bikes, I mean, they've got it all. They really do have it all. So that's still where Ducati are at the moment. Honda. Let's talk about this Honda story. No Repsol Hondas in the main race on Sunday. No Repsol Hondas really in the sprint race on Saturday, because Joan Mir destroyed himself on the opening lap. Again, I think the worst thing that could have happened to Honda this year so far was Marc Marquez qualifying in pole and doing so well in that first sprint race, because it's kind of clouded where they actually are, and where they actually are is not a good place. Alex Marquez's performance on that Ducati, pole position, yes, tricky conditions, mixed conditions, but still, and putting on the podium in the wet conditions and doing all right in the sprint race on Saturday, just proves how bad that Honda was, first of all, and how good Marc Marquez actually is, because he's been, last year, Alex Marquez could not buy a top 15, and the year before. Marc Marquez, a 60-70% fit Marc Marquez, was still getting podiums and winning races on that bike. No disrespect to Alex Marquez, because I think he's done a phenomenal job, and I'm glad to see him up there.
Respect,
Exactly. But can you imagine what a Marc Marquez would do on a Ducati or an Aprilia? I mean, it would just...
horrible. I think Dorna are probably paying half of his salary to Repsol so that he doesn't move.
He'll just make it so boring. But I look at this, and it was a disaster weekend for Honda again. Alex Rins kind of proved that they've still got a lot of work to do. But anyway, since that, I've had a lot of people and a lot of my mates say, you know what, I can see Marc moving. He's going to leave Honda and off he goes. And my question is, well, where does he go? Ducati won't take him. Why would Ducati take him? Why would Ducati get rid of one of their riders that they pay €1 million? They get a Bezzecchi at 900,000 euros for the year. They get a Marini at €1 million a year. They get Martina. Why would they want him? Why would anyone want a 15 million euro a year? In many ways, damaged goods Marc Marquez, because every time he crashes now and makes a mistake, which he's going to do, he hurts himself. So why would you want him?
Yeah.
So where's he going to go?
I'd like the question to be posed. I'd like it to be an opportunity, because I have no doubt they'll try and make it work, because there's brains behind it. Ducati, they would say nay to it because of exactly what you mentioned, but there's also so many passionate old racers like your Todozzi, and that are actually hot shots there. So, and they want to win. They want the fastest guy possible. And I mean, they believe in the guys they have now, but I don't think there's a manufacturer that wouldn't try and grab Marc, because he's undoubtedly something special. And I think anybody that knows racing and has races has to admire what he does and has done in the past. So you don't know if you'll ever see somebody that can ride a motorcycle quite like he can. I don't think his confidence is quite where it used to be, or maybe his fitness. I think his fitness is there now. But I mean, the point you're getting at is how he does the things that he does on that bike, and nobody else can do it. Previous champions, race winners, all these things. You just got to hope that the Japanese guys can get their stuff together, because they're the only ones that are slacking at the moment.
Well, he's given them the ultimatum, and like I said, hats off to them, because they are doing everything they can. They've hired this Ken Kawachi came over from the Suzuki project. They've but it just doesn't seem like they have their own direction. Ducati came out with these Spinosaurus winglets. They've got the exact same winglets on their bike. At least KTM and Yamaha are the most hideous design ever, but they kind of went their own route and they're doing their own things. Where Honda just are going, okay, what are they doing? Let's take what they, they're trying to rush this thing because Marquez has put this pressure on them. I want a bike now, so they don't have time, which is killing them because they're in a panic, and you can see they're in a panic. And I just look at it and I think, okay, on the one hand, I think Ducati would go, we are, especially with Quartararo and Marc Marquez potentially going, right, these projects aren't working, let's move. They would be taking the two strongest assets and their two strongest rivals away from their rivals and putting them on their bike. But I just look at it and I go, who do you give up? Okay, Zarco potentially is up at the end of the year, but then what do you put Bastianini back down into Pramac? And people say, well, no, KTM must take him. Okay, well, what do? Do you put Brad Binder or Jack Miller in the Gas Tech 3 team to make space for Marc Marquez? And you've got a Pedro Acosta coming. Where does Pedro? So I just, like you said, I've thought about it, but I haven't really written it down to go, right, what are the actual possibilities of where this guy could go? And for me, there aren't many because of the price that he comes at. And in many ways, is he damaged goods? Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, it's such a pity he's got this penalty going to Kota because, Kota, even if the bike's not there, he's able to just pull something out of the bag.
Yeah.
I think it will be exciting with a long lap penalty because now he's got extra motivation to push harder and to push faster and to go for it even more. It's just MotoGP is better with a competitive Marc Marquez. I know people gave him a lot of slack for Portimao, but MotoGP is a better sport with a fast Marc Marquez there. So I really do hope that they can get it going.
Yeah, definitely. I think, whether you love him or hate him, you've got to respect what he does, definitely.
I've got to give hats off to an Augusto Fernandez on the gas. I think he did. I think he had a good weekend. I think he did really well. As I said, Raul Fernandez to me, is again one of these kids that just can't seem to sort it out. I just think mentally he's not strong enough to sort it out. He has these one or two really good laps, and you think, okay, it was looking good, and then he just can't string it together. And again, it was a bad weekend for Raul Fernandez and that RNF team. Stephen Berry shouted out to the one rookie in the Moto3 that I've got to give a shout out to, David Almansa. I agree, fantastic. And I love seeing these young rookies coming into Moto3 and performing because it just means there's more talent coming through. I absolutely love it. Pity he was taken out by Scott Ogden, the British rider, kind of just tried to sever his head off. But again, that's just motorcycle racing. That's what happens. Yeah. In terms of where was I going to go next? I had such a good talking point. Now I've kind of just talked myself into let's talk Marini and Bezzecchi, of course. That's where I wanted to go. VR46 Ducati. We know Rossi, that's his team. He's the team owner. He's now not only a MotoGP winner and a 9-time world champion, he's now a MotoGP team owner winner. But you sent me your predictions for the sprint race, and you always, as in Portimao, had Bezzecchi there. Bezzecchi has become a real contender, and I never thought of it. I wasn't too impressed with him in Moto2. I thought he was good, but I didn't think he was consistently fast. But he's in this environment that he's comfortable and happy. He's got a machine to thrive, and I mean, it was a flawless performance by Bezzecchi. Yes, he got out front and he didn't have the spray that the other riders had to deal with, and that, which, certainly would have helped him. But again, he had to put himself in that position, which he did, and didn't put a mistake wrong. And in those kind of conditions, even when you're out front and don't have the spray, to set that pace in those conditions, it's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, definitely. And he was just going faster and faster and making an even bigger gap. So, yeah, he did a really good job. And I mean, just coming from racing all life, you just know what to look for, really. And since Portimao, you just go look at all practices and qualifying, and just go look at his lap sequence, and he's just consistently fast. Whether he's behind people on his own, doesn't matter. In Moto2, I don't like using Moto2. Even in Moto3, how I feel about Moto3. And Moto2 is a little bit like that. Obviously, it's better being a big bike, and it comes a lot more rider input into the bike. But it's still, you look at Quartararo, where was he in Moto2? It was a backmarker. He had one or two good results in that, but other than that, he was never a championship contender. Went to MotoGP and winning championship. So It's hard to judge. It's hard to judge there, you know. Yeah, I think everybody in the field is talented, but yeah, when it goes to MotoGP, then you see who shines. Obviously, someone climbs on a Honda now. Again, that's not a fair opportunity because of where the bike is at the moment, as you can see with Alex. But yeah, I think Bezzecchi is just doing a fantastic job. His confidence is high. Both him and Marini, their confidence is high, and I mean they've got everything. Valentino's given them. He's built up a team that's just like a factory team, and Ducati obviously been doing things the way they do. Everybody gets the same stuff. Yeah, maybe they can afford an older bike, so somebody ends up on an older bike, but they get all of the references that they had with that bike. They get all of the data every weekend to check their gears compared to Bagnaia, compared to whoever else they want to look at. So I think Ducati has a big role in actually not just the fact that they produce a really good bike, but the support that they give to the guys. So these now Moto2 guys last year showed flashes of brilliance, and now able to, with 1 year under their belt, able to be championship contenders. It's a good thing for sure.
It is a good thing for MotoGP. It makes it more exciting. You know, I don't even play these MotoGP fantasy leagues or anything anymore because 3-4 years ago you could pick your top three all day long and you would 90% of the time get it accurate. Now, I mean, it's a blank piece of paper. Every single MotoGP race weekend is a blank piece of paper. Brad Binder, you know, when I saw him qualify 15th, you know, as a fan, you want to headbutt stuff and kick the dog and, you know, do whatever, because you're never going to be able to do anything. The guy goes from 15th to first in 12 laps in a sprint race where you are not supposed to. Bezzecchi goes and wins his first MotoGP and dominates in tricky conditions on a 1-year-old Ducati. Pecco Bagnaia, who is the Terminator in MotoGP at the moment, last weekend we were singing his praises, doesn't put a foot wrong, is just this, you know, he's just spot on, doesn't make mistakes, goes and makes a mistake and crashes out. And, you know, at that point in that race, I was like, this is going to be a boring race. Pecco's going to kind of extend his championship lead. Yeah, now his main championship contenders, Fabio Quartararo and them are back in the field. Oh, God, you know, 3 runs in and Pecco's going to have this 40-point lead. Tucks the front, down he goes. Bezzecchi's leading the championship now, about 10 points or whatever. And that is the beauty of MotoGP. And it's because, as you said, Ducati have created this platform for them to be able to do it. So people can knock Ducati all they want. They have made MotoGP more exciting. Yes, not in the fact that there's 8 Ducatis and it's always Ducatis at the front, but forget what machine they're on. There's more riders being able to compete now because of what Ducati are doing. And it's made Honda, KTM, Yamaha, it's made them all step up, which is making the sport more interesting. So yeah, MotoGP, love it. It was a great race weekend. The Sunday race was a little bit boring because of the weather. I would have loved a dry race. Brad, spectacular in the sprint race. KTM on the right track. Yamaha, disaster. Honda, disaster. Morbidelli, great to see him up there. Ducati still doing what Ducati do in the championships, close with Pecco's mistake. Moto2, Darren Binder. I am very impressed. You know, taking my fanboy cap off, putting my reality cap on. I'm impressed because even Brad Binder, coming from Moto3 into Moto2, first couple of races just didn't shine, didn't do anything on the bike, didn't really make it, you know, battle to make it out of Q1 into Q2. It was a tough transition. Darren, both first race meetings, has gone into Q1, yes, but he's come out of Q1 into Q2. In Portimao, was battling for a top 10, made the mistake, crashed out, no problem. Very limited track time in the wet, none in Argentina, had a little bit of wet time in Portimao. Thrown into this race day Sunday in wet conditions, doesn't know how it feels or anything, goes out, challenges for the top 5, 6 in the opening laps and pulls off a top 10. It was a brilliant performance from Darren, who I'm so glad he looks comfortable. I think he must forget about MotoGP for 2 years because I think he can really be a massive success in Moto2.
Yeah, definitely. It's what after Portimao, this is what we had hoped for him, and it's exactly what happened. So all it can do is build confidence going forward. I don't particularly think he's a rain rider as such, you know, not as wet weather specialist. So I think if it was dry, I actually think he would have done better. But he still ended up with a result and a weekend that we had hoped for after Portimao. So it can only be confidence inspiring, and yeah, I think just more to come. Exactly what we said after Portimao. I think it's a matter of time before the confidence is there, and then he's going to be battling for podiums every weekend. And like you said, is the perfect thing. And I don't think he's the kind of guy that'll be drumming on and not sleeping at night because he's hoping on a MotoGP ride. But yeah, you can definitely, even if the MotoGP ride does come or doesn't, you can make a long future out of Moto2, as lots of guys have done anyway, or go to World Superbike. There's so many options from there. But yeah, the job at hand, and I don't think he's thinking about anything but that, is to make something out of Moto2 shot. And yeah, at the moment, the way he's headed is that he's going to be at the front in the next couple of races, and I think he'll just stay there.
Yeah, I think like Francois van der Merwe mentions here, if you look at Darren in his second Moto2 race ever, first time in the wet, pulled off that race where there's a Pedro Acosta, the next best thing, and we know the talent that is Pedro Acosta. He's phenomenal. He's definitely going to be in MotoGP and be a huge talent. He already is. But, there he was with a full year under his belt, ridden in the rain before, started off just, wasn't at the race there on the weekend. Whether that's him thinking championship more and, don't want to risk injury in the wet and that different mentality. But it just highlights again, Darren beat Sam Lowe's, there's a lot of big names that Darren beat there. So, yeah, I was really, really impressed. And like I said, this is with the fanboy cap off. This is the reality kind of look at it. It was a phenomenal, phenomenal ride. And I think, with the mistake that he made in Portimao and with Darren's past, I was kind of cringing every lap because I was waiting for that graphic to come up. Darren Binder crashed because he's got it in him. But he showed maturity, he showed his class, and he pulled off what was a great sixth place. So, there we go. Scott Mordaunt. I heard Chuck Norris sent a fax to Darren apologizing in advance for any misunderstandings in the future. Yeah, because Darren you were the same in some of your rides in World Supersport and World Superbikes, tough as nails. South Africans are taught just to shut up and get on with it. And that's what I enjoyed with Brad after the race as well. Everyone was going on Vinales, and I was kind of scared to post on social media like, listen, I'm a Brad Binder fan, don't get me wrong, but it was a racing incident. But I was like, if I post that up, MRW is going to just crash and burn. People are going to hate me because we all see it as a Brad Binder fan. He got taken out, and Vinales. But we as fans, let's not lose sight of why we love the sport, and it's because of racing. There's going to be moves that we're going to hate that are going to be put on Brad Binder and ruin his race, as we saw on Sunday. But there's going to be times where Brad Binder pulls those exact moves and we go, it's racing, leave it alone. So we've got to look at it. As I said when we started the show, there were times when I did it and I was like, shut up, man, it's racing. There were times where it happened to me and I'd go, where's the penalty? This guy must load his bike and go home. It's not. It's what makes motorcycle racing as beautiful as it is. It's the highs and lows of bike racing. We've said it so many times. You have a love-hate relationship with motorcycle racing because one week you are the bee's knees. Saturday, in one day, Brad Binder went from breaking the internet and MotoGP's blue-eyed boy to, he crashed. KTM, I have problems again. And they're back. You know what I mean? That's just where we are with MotoGP.
Yeah, it's the truth. That's unfortunately the way it is.
It is. So, but either way, I think the recipe's there. I think Dorna need to pull themselves straight in many ways, but I think we've already had a fantastic start to the season, and I cannot wait for Kota. I can't wait to get back to Europe. Jerez, we know Jerez always throws up a couple of curveballs because, as I said, a lot of teams and manufacturers are fast there. The asphalt's good. A lot of guys can take full advantage. But if the beauty about it is, if I just say to you now, Shez, predict your top three in the World Championship.
It's tough.
You can't.
It goes going to look at the first races and make a judgment, but so many people haven't been there, have crashed or have made mistakes or something. So it's going to be tough. If you just go off crashing, you can say, but he crashes. But Bagnaia last year had a lot of crashes. At one stage, it was like the championship. Everyone thought he was out of it, and he still won the championship. So it's going to be a tough call. It'd be hard to go against any of the Ducatis, but you don't know who it's going to be.
I love that because you sent me your race predictions and they were pretty good. I think it was Bez, Bagnaia, and Alex Marquez. And I was like, I'm going to show this guy up. I'm going to go, I think, Maverick, Aleix, and I can't remember, Bagnaia in third. And after one lap, I sent you, and I just said, okay, never mind. That's completely over in the sprint race. And that's the beauty of it. So, let's hope that can happen again. Does anyone think Pekisa will be resurfaced? Sean Wellman. Sean, I've been hearing about Pekisa being resurfaced for the last 100 years. I really don't know. I would love to be able to answer you, but I can't. Gerard Kruger, good point. Zarco's comeback. Zarco's comeback was phenomenal. And it's, Zarco's still chasing this MotoGP race win, and I hope it comes soon because I think he deserves it in many ways. But again, it's the risk versus reward factor, because after the race, he said, I just took it easy early on and I was trying to feel conditions and whatever. Yes, he had a brilliant ride into second, but you've got to just say, bugger it and go. Zarco's pulled off these brilliant rides where he's come from 10th to second so many times and 10th to third. Okay, but you need to win a race. So that's why I keep saying, for me, Zarco is probably the first guy that if there was a space to be made available for a Brad, for a Marquez, for a Quartararo and Ducati, I think Zarco would be that piece that would fall away. And it's not because he's a terrible rider. It's just because I don't think he's got that killer instinct that, like you mentioned earlier, that you have to have. So anyway, that's where we're going to leave it. Shares, I can see you're turning into the hunchback of the South there because of your seating position. I'm getting nice and hungry now as well. Thank you everyone for joining in. I hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure you stay tuned to Motor Rider World's Facebook page and our YouTube channel for all the MotoGP content and bike tests and everything else that we got. I wish you a great rest of the week. And I don't know what we're going to do next weekend, Shares. You've got to do the garden and spend more time with the kids now. I don't know what I'm going to do.
I want to try to ride some bike. My ankle's getting a bit better.
Okay. How is the ankle feeling? And are you getting ready for Le Mans, is it?
Yeah, Le Mans in 2 weeks. So we race on the 15th, 16th. So yeah, I had the thing strapped up and it's gotten better a lot quicker than I had anticipated. So I'm hoping to ride a motorcycle pretty soon. And then, start the travels next weekend, Sunday.
Well, all the best with that. Keep us updated on your social media. Follow Sheridan Rice on Facebook and everything. And keep us up to date. And if you get to Le Mans, take us for a nice walk around your bike and show us life as a world endurance rider, because that championship is absolutely fantastic. You haven't seen it. So that's it. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great week further. And until Kota, we'll do Talking MotoGP the Monday night straight after Kota. Take it easy, everybody. Goodbye.